Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here at Brickvention, Australia, and I'm joined by two builders who have this wonderful Brickheadz layout here. And so if you guys want to talk about kind of what inspired this layout and then take us through the details of it.
Well, I have to say that Fabuland was, for me, the best part of my childhood. So Fabuland was basically between Duplo and System back between 1979 and 1988. So it had a decent run. I loved it so much, and of course everybody's gone nuts for Brickheadz. So we thought, let's combine the two.
I thought it was significant to look at Fabuland this year because we are celebrating 40 years since Fabuland first came to the market in 1979. It was around till 1988. It represents in part the Lego Group's first foray into storytelling and multimedia as a way of uniting a theme. They represent the first named characters in amongst any of the figures that Lego ever released, and as well we had tie-in storybooks, tie-in records. There was even a tie-in television series, Edward and Friends, that had it was just still stands up relatively well in the context of children's entertainment of that era.
So you guys even have some fun props here that we'll talk about real quick before we launch into the build. So for people who aren't familiar with the theme, maybe talk about what this is.
So this is basically the instructions for Fabuland. So not only is it the instructions, but it's a storybook at the same time. So you go through the story of Catherine and Morty enjoying building their house. But then as you go through, Morty's rather lazy. So he doesn't like to do a lot of work, and Catherine gets just a little bit annoyed with him, and they have a big fight. So then they decide that they've got to live by themselves. So they break the whole thing apart. So it's also showing you how you can build separately, use the bits and pieces. But then, of course, like all good stories, they realise it's not so much fun to live apart, and they make friends again.
It's a happy ending.
It's a happy ending.
So it was kind of inspirational building material while also telling a story about the characters.
Yeah, and a lot in the late 70s, early 80s, all of the sets, particular city, they had pictures on other builds that you could do. So this is essentially, you can build the way that we've got the picture on the box, but pull it apart, try again, build something else. What can you create with this theme? So, I mean, we had as kids, we had all of them together, and they would all do different things. And I mean, the raccoon, you'd have you'd have the post office, and you've got the mill, and they'd go and get food from the corner store. So it was interactive play. You could play with the sets, but you could also build anything you wanted along those lines.
Fantastic. So then, Richard, what do you have here?
So, look, I've got a comparison of how some of these sets have changed. Well, our adaptation has just varied compared to the original set itself. Essentially, over the last 40 years, I'm about twice as wide and twice as high as I was back then. And that fits in nicely with the scale of the Brickhead figure compared to the regular Fabuland figure from that time. And we've tried to recreate some of the fun sets from that era, particularly the hospital, Catherine Cat and Morty Mouse's house, the mayor's car, the police van, and then some of the smaller sets as well. And perhaps some of the most satisfying ones have been Wilfred Walrus and his boat, and Edward the Elephant, who's fishing on the end of the jetty. They were just very satisfying builds, particularly, and interesting problems to solve using the Brickhead aesthetic. And so it's been a fun project to do. We've split the workload between us. probably one of the more challenging problems that Shelley had to work on with the building was the shape of the window frames, and that's ultimately involved a lot of snot work to bring these round window frames that existed in the original sets. And there was a double arch in the first year. They then moved on to sort of circular window frames in subsequent years. And so that was just an interesting challenge to solve from a builder's perspective. And I'm glad that she took that one on, because for me, I found that was just a little bit mind-mangling. But it was great from that point of view to be able to collaborate as well and offer tips as far as the shape of the faces of the brickheads and the way in which those figures themselves evolved as well over the time that we were building them.
Fantastic. So maybe if you guys each want to grab a couple brickheads here and kind of talk about the design process of some of your favorites, or kind of what that was like for you.
And so, without a doubt, Wilford is probably the hardest one that I did. I mean, it was easy. You got the straightforward brickhead, you know, but he's got a hat, he's got a big nose. It's about, and also just using the right colour. I mean, dark orange, making sure you've got everything in the right colour. He's not so easy just to make that sit and the hat. So having to use snots, I mean, like his hat's on a hinge, and like if I take his hat off, you know, he's missing half his head. But just getting the right amount of snot coverage and the right amount of curve, it's not straightforward. I mean, most of the brickheads just have a square head with the double snots. So to create curves that look right is not necessarily an easy challenge.
No, for sure, but I think you were able to overcome it nicely here, because certainly when you compare the characters, it's very recognizable.
Well, so one thing I found is because he's got a wider nose, I mean, just as simple I had to use a 1x4 plate to bring the nose out, because you can't do snots on the side, and I needed the snots to make the walrus underneath. I did it about 3 times, pulled it apart every time and just went, no, it's not working, that's not working, that's not working. The body's easy. The body's straightforward. You just, you know, make one, set and forget. You just do it in different colours. So every head has its challenge. Which one's your favourite, Richard?
The monkey on my back during the whole process literally was Mike Monkey, because I found the ears were difficult to get in a good shape. He's particularly got round ears, and we then have a challenge as far as the colour matching. Ultimately, I've compromised using the brown circular tiles in a clip onto the side of the head. If that part was in the right colour, that probably would have given me a higher level of satisfaction with my final build. Probably the one that brought me the greatest joy to actually complete, though, would have been Edward, who is the elephant who's often seen in a sou'wester and raincoat with his fishing rod, and just getting the shape of the curves of the rain hat and was probably the hardest part of this build, and just getting the rounded shape of his head. The trunk itself was probably the easiest part, and where I actually started with this build, and just ended up moving backwards using some online photographs of the original Fabuland figure as my guide and prompt. Compared to some of the others, I've cheated here to give him a tilting arm just so he can have his fishing rod on the right angle. And we've gone for the cardboard cutout lake because it fits so nicely in with the aesthetic from the advertising material for Fabuland at the time.
So you really combine Lego with some of these other materials to give that really fantastic kind of Fabuland look.
Absolutely, and I think that was one of the great things of a lot of the material. We saw a lot of the early minifigure archive advertisement material from that era, released in August of 2018, and just reminding us of that way that Lego originally used mixed media for a lot of its promotional material, both for print advertisements and also within their own catalogues. It was a great way to sort of give you permission to be able to then move forward. Not everything had to be brick built, because using 18 bright green base plates along here was going to be a little bit excessive. Things wouldn't necessarily sit nicely, and tiling it all up so that it looked smooth was not
a daunting thought.
It was a daunting thought, and going to take significantly longer than I had spare time to deal with. Absolutely, I was daunted.
There you go. One other element of the layout I definitely want to make sure we talk about is the vehicles and the train here. So those are really great as well. So talk about how those came together.
So with the vehicles in Fabuland are of a very modular design, and a lot of them have very few pieces. They have a brick which represents the engine and headlight, a single part with a single chassis with wheels on and mudguards, and then there's sort of a driver's compartment, driver's cockpit, and then either a passenger cockpit, a roof, or a couple of door and window frame units that go back to make the cabin. I have used some of the new 1x1 brackets here to bring this window out to the side, and used the half plate offset that you get with some of the bracket parts to just bring that all out nice and evenly. I've moved the door around to the back and incorporated some hinges here so that we can get our doors open and to reveal the building deficits within. The train itself, there was never a Fabuland train, but I felt that the Duplo train probably best met the scale and the aesthetic for the chassis and carriage to ride here. Now, as I started putting it together, I realised that we had a pig, we had a panda, and as we're here at the end of January, we're coming up towards the start of the Lunar New Year, and so we've done the train out in gold and black as a nod to the Lunar New Year that's rapidly approaching. And there's certainly nothing like a little bit of colour and movement to get the kids engaged a little bit more with a theme that doesn't really relate to them as part of what they grew up with. And so it's just helped as well to have the kids taking part while their parents are going, oh wow, I had that set.
Exactly. So yeah, then Shelley, what have been some of the kids' reactions kind of coming up? Because obviously younger kids would not recognize this theme right off. So what are some of their reactions?
Honestly, the first reaction I had was, oh, it's Duplo. Which was like, no, it's not Duplo. But they all think it's cute. Mm-hmm. And they all like to have a go at turning the train on, and more than anything, it's the parents that are going, oh, I've got that. Or I had a girl yesterday who said that they've got the hospital. They actually play with the hospital. So mum or dad had that when they were growing up. So there's a few kids that go, yeah, I know what it is. But on the whole, it really is the parents just going, wow, I love it. So from that aspect, it's nice to see that quite a few people still enjoy it. Some people have asked for it back, but, like everything with Lego, things have their time and place. So we enjoy it this way, and we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing with a lot of these classic themes from our childhood that we would love to see come back. I would encourage people to come back to Lego, to find the pieces that existed and to try and rebuild some of these themes as their own, use their own take, because the internal aesthetic and the way in which sets are built today has changed a lot. It's been like the jump from black and white standard definition to the ultra high definition
4K
TV today. It's the whole building aesthetic has changed over the time, and I think if we want to see sort of things built in a classic style, it's up to us to embrace that and do it, and not necessarily to rely on Lego to do that for us, because I think if we will, we'll be a bit disappointed. We'll be waiting for a long time.
Sometimes it's better if the fans just do it themselves.
You get the appreciation too. Yeah. If fans do it themselves, then it tends to get shared on social media, and I mean, like, we're here, people are looking at the Fabuland and going, wow, I remember that. So do it yourself. I mean, if you happen to like Jack Stone or, God forbid, Galador, make it your own. You know, take it and show your passion for that particular theme in any way you can. So every piece is usable in some different way. You've just got to find out how to use it.
Exactly. Well said. Well, I appreciate both of you taking us through the layout here. I think the Fabuland theme is such a unique theme, so it's always cool to see what builders can do with it. So I'm glad you were able to bring it to Brickvention. Thank you.